No pressure to our next guest, Simon Baratt. If you've been in the UK games industry, I think, Simon, there he is. He's appeared with us. Well, at least since the late 90s, right, Simon? So, yeah, I think you count as a veteran now.
I don't know about that, but we'll see.
Yeah. Simon has, as I just alluded to, Simon's had a tremendous experience in all kinds of roles and ways in the global game industry, and I'm well known across that industry, and particularly in the UK. Of course, at the moment, it's all about cooperative innovations. So Simon's here to talk to us about launching Spaceteam VR. And some of the earlier talks today, we had some questions about VR. So great that there's kind of some interest. And then we have this talk touching on that. Yeah. So as we are there, in fact, I've gone 30 seconds over, so I better hand over to you, Simon. Good to see you here, and I will shut up.
Thanks very much, Will. Good to see you. Hi everyone, this is a bit of an unusual way to give a talk, my first kind of Zoom talk ever, so bear with me. So today I'm going to be talking about a recently launched Spaceteam VR and how the launch has gone with the kind of backdrop of COVID-19 and our sort of current thinking in terms of next steps for the title. Obviously it's not kind of a launch and forget kind of thing. It's something we want to keep pushing as our community grows with the game. And Emma from our team actually gave a talk about our love for cooperative gaming and how Spaceteam came about back in the Meet Space version of Pocket Gamer that was back in January. So it's nice to be back in the virtual one to give this update. To briefly introduce myself, I'm Simon Baratt. I'm CEO and co-founder. Been in the industry for 21 years, originally as a coder, but tend to wear sort of business design and code hats nowadays. Worked on a lot of titles in that time on pretty much every platform and a lot of genres. Doing all those different types of things from coding through to business and design and marketing on many of them. So despite all that sort of kind of stuff, Spaceteam is the first title we've launched as Cooperative Innovations. We've been working on enterprise work for hire. We've been building technologies, which I'll cover in a second, and it is the first VR game that I've released as well. So we've done a couple of AR titles back at 4.11 with Sony PlayStation Vita, and we did a few major VR apps released. But yeah, this has been exciting as our first kind of VR launch. So just briefly, Cooperative Innovations, we're an immersive technology and content studio. We do believe that multiplayer is kind of a multiplier for any experience. So the fact you have these other people to share these experiences with you. All of the stuff we've done is kind of based around bringing people together, primarily through VR and AR, but we're also looking at how that can work with other screens as well, which Spaceteam is certainly one of those things. So our work has been around the technologies I mentioned before. So a few of these are shown on this slide. So here we've got on the top left is our original game we started working on, Raiders of Erda. So that's still kind of in development in the background. Top right, you've got our Ichabod IK system, which produces all the animation for the characters we used. So you'll see this in the Spaceteam videos. It's our full body animation system. Even lets your characters doing the twerking dance there as well. And then bottom left is some full body animation we did for a work for hire project, an Innovate UK funded project where we're doing full body tracking, feet and arms and elbows and everything else, and hand tracking with the knuckles from Valve. And then bottom right is an old R&D experience we did, which was hanging out in a pub, featuring our lip syncing, our eye gaze simulation, and sort of interactive physics between people. So these are the kinds of things that we've built up. You can see the multiplayer in Raiders of Erda on the top left as well. And these technologies and the knowledge we've been building up is sort of what led to Spaceteam. And there's some of our lovely bunch of people looking cheesy from the team. So Spaceteam VR is what we're going to talk about today. So it's a cooperative shout 'em up VR game based on a very popular mobile game created by Henry Smith back in 2012. I'm just going to show our launch trailer. Hope for the volume won't be too bad on this. Let's make sure I'm sharing my audio. Sorry, share. Yeah, hopefully this will work okay for you, for people who haven't seen it. Yeah, so the original version of Spaceteam, as I mentioned, was released in 2012. So did about 8 million downloads and had a sort of in-app purchase upgrade for the Admirals Club, as they called it, which is like their premium version, unlocked further features. So we were producing Raiders of Erda, as I mentioned earlier on in the company's life, early in October 2016. We kind of reached out to Henry and licensed it for VR, knowing that cooperative games is what we wanted to be building, and that it was basically the ultimate couch co-op kind of game. So we did a lot of prototyping early on. I've got some videos of that on the next slide. We'd been pitching it in 2018 alongside the development work we were doing on Raiders of Erda. At that point, we were still growing the team, raising funds and scaling the team in mid-2018. And then we took the decision in 2019, I think probably January, February time, I think it was, that we kind of pushed on with full production of Spaceteam. And we announced that as part of the Upload VR showcase back at E3 in 2019 last year. We got the Oculus Quest version approved, which was huge for us because we felt that the game was perfect for that kind of put your headset on, have a quick game, and especially with the cross-play feature, which we'll talk about in a minute. We then took it to EGX in 2019, which had a great response. So people seeing the game who either knew Spaceteam or didn't, the sort of fun we can have, up to 6 players all shouting at each other in VR. And then we start to prep for launch. So I'll just go through a few quick prototype videos. So here we've got the top right is kind of some interaction tests we were doing. So obviously we're doing a lot of VR prototyping already at this point. And this was just more of the controls we were looking at. Perspective. Top left is some of the initial concept layouts and experimenting with it being wrapped around you, in front of you. We did a lot of testing of where the other people would be based on
the fluffy train on.
Your player view and everything else, so you can see each other and communicate.
Turn over out. Hang on. Engage E on food.
Player there.
Very basic avatars. Turn over out.
So the launch plan. So I'm going to run through this quickly. You might see some slight changes as we go through. It started well, as I said, with EGX, and at EGX we ran into a couple of the PAX East organisers, PAX organisers, and they'd mentioned their Megathon end of sort of event finale on stage was where they normally feature a secret game. And so this was previously with Spaceteam many years ago. They had a lot of problems on the iPad trying to run the game. And so it'd be quite amusing for them to bring back Spaceteam VR as the 2020 finale game. So we kept this very quiet. We were demoing there at PAX. We got this great introduction and the on stage with them.
That with the help of Cooperative Innovations, we're going back to Spaceteam in VR. Yes.
So that was going really well. We got tens of thousands of people watching the stream online there, and obviously that started to build the momentum up. But of course, while we were there at PAX, we were very aware there was a certain bug, but more specifically a virus going on, which impacted some of our other plans. So unfortunately, GDC Expo and all of the journalist chats and everything there, Res, London Games Festival, and Insomnia were kind of a big part of what was going to be the run up to our launch and kind of post-launch support. So instead, we kind of focused on the digital side of things even more. Obviously, it's massively important anyway, but in terms of that community engagement, that was a key part of what we were doing to produce the content that we could show off for people enjoying the game and that kind of shouting element to it as well. We then launched our Discord, which is part of a pre-release testing method, and to get the influencers and streamers on there as well. That was pushed out to our mailing list fans, journalists and other industry friends as well. And that helped us make sure that the servers were scaling correctly, making sure we'd ironed out all issues with like the Steam integrations and Oculus integrations and stuff, plus the various VR hardware compatibility issues. We were a bit limited because a lot of our more specialized VR kits and ones we weren't using as much for development were stuck in the office and people unable to get them at the time. So that was a bit of a challenge, and thanks to the community, we were able to fix those issues very early on. And then of course we're pushing for reviews and coverage as we're going live. We've got some great stuff from Tested, YouTube channel, Upload VR, VR Focus, and several others. And then we launched on May the 21st, so not even a month ago yet. And the plan now, of course, is to continue to promote and influence the game, but we'll go into that a little bit further. So just to briefly talk about COVID-19, obviously, like a lot of teams, development teams, we moved quickly to work from home. We obviously made sure the team had everything they needed to be able to do that. Our productivity dropped a little bit. We're kind of in that really good momentum for running up to launch, and moving out of the office, and everything else was a little bit of an immediate hit. It also impacted our external QA team, because they were a huge sort of 2,000-3,000 person team moving to work from home with all the VR equipment and everything else. So that did impact our velocity of fixing bugs, which meant obviously we could test those internally, but if the team were testing, then they weren't doing the development work to do the fixes. So we did end up having some small delays due to that and due to our productivity up to launch. We also had some time taken away due to the fact that our work for hire side of the business was impacted slightly, which took my time away from the project. But obviously that's now been resolved, which is good. So here's the usual sort of chart that people normally expect to see on sales. Obviously the scale down the side isn't quite as high as we'd hoped at this point, but we're hopeful based on the reviews and the fun that people are having and the engagement stats that we see on the back end, that we can build from here with various long tail and promotional opportunities. And of course, we think the long tail is likely much thicker in terms of VR because there's less content coming out on there anyway, and people are keen for social and family friendly content. So just to dig in a little bit more, so what went well? So the video coverage which we received worked really well. We had a spectator camera mode, which has been shown in a few of these shots, where a sort of mouse and keyboard version of the game can log in and watch any game going on live. That's really useful for producing video, so the streamers kind of love that. We've also got some mixed reality support, but that's been improved in the next versions I mentioned in a second. The original Spaceteam fans obviously knew the game, and we'd seen that at EGX and PAX, that people who knew the game well just loved it and jumped in and had a lot of fun. But we also had new people jumping in, and they compared it to Keep Talking Nobody Explodes and obviously Star Trek Bridge Crew. They also enjoyed the face-to-face mode, which is where you can cross-play between tablets, phones, when basically our web app, with VR players as well, and the single player which we added in. Some people even saying that they'd always wanted a single player version of Spaceteam. Our infrastructure seemed to be holding up, and obviously the numbers were smaller than we've been testing for, but that was kind of a nice thing that everything just worked, and we've got the ability to build on that platform now. Difficulty wise, we kind of got reasonable responses to that. We had a couple of exceptions of like certain levels. If the random number generator didn't do a good job, then it would be quite harsh on people around level 12 on medium difficulty, but we can tweak all that stuff now. And we'd also had a lot of people mentioning that they were just enjoying the social VR angle that we had, which we always knew, even going back to our hanging out in the pub in our previous demo, that people could just have fun being together in VR. And that's another sort of area we're looking to build on with the launch of Spaceteam now. So yeah, initial reviews were sort of 4-star, 5-star, and a couple of annoying sort of launch bugs which we fixed early on. This is a couple of streamers just enjoying the video to show some of the fun people have been having.
Fix it up! Evacuate into the deck!
Grease detector 0.
Yeah. Ow, jeez, ow!
So we're planning lots more of those sort of videos coming up soon. And yeah, so we just had some nice comments from people about them. They wanted to play more the face-to-face mode, which we intended to be mobile phones playing in person in the same location. With COVID-19 lockdown, people found that they could play the game over voice chat anyway. So actually, we'd created a kind of online mobile and VR crossplay due to the way that our servers were structured to do that, and we're not going to adjust that at all, even though the wording is very much around it being a local thing. And then people, as we've sort of enjoyed the phone version, saw that we'd brought across the sort of feeling of the phone game to VR well, which is nice to see from sort of a critical review point of view. So in terms of what went less well, we did have a locked build on Quest, so we had a specific version we had to launch with, and due to it being a cross-play game, we didn't want to launch on Quest with a game that Steam players couldn't then play with their Quest friends or Rift friends on the Oculus version, which meant that the build we'd been working on with our beta testers, or rather the pre-release testers, wasn't as up to date when we launched. So we had a couple of reviews which hurt us a little bit on Steam when we first launched. And that was a tricky one, where we could have launched the Steam build separately, or we could have done an update on Quest, kind of ignoring the advice from Oculus, I guess. But given it was our first launch with the platform holder, we didn't want to break anything on their side. And we had a couple of issues which sneaked through, which we fixed within 2 or 3 days of the first report to them as well. We did hit a bug on the Oculus Android app, so they've got a store app where you can download games through. Unfortunately, there's another game showed as unavailable during the launch week, which is a shame. We had a few developer friends and a few members of our Discord sort of point that out to us. The game was available to buy in VR though, so we don't know what impact that had, but obviously it was a bit of a negative to show that people were searching for it and it was showing as unavailable to them. Our conversion stats in terms of what we sort of see from an Oculus point of view and from Steam point of view, we're getting a lot of visitors, but our conversion wasn't that high, so we're not sure yet. We're still digging in and experimenting with what the potential issue there is. We think it's a little bit lower than it should be. We don't know entirely, whether that's around price or messaging. And obviously that's something we're looking at as we sort of continue to update the game. And so yeah, with a less than ideal launch, being an online game primarily, even though we've got the 3 different modes, which don't require online players to be there, we have started to see 1-star reviews of people just basically saying there's a lack of online players, and even 5-star reviews where people are loving it when they're playing with people or loving the other modes we have, but are sort of lamenting the fact we've not got as many players online as we'd like, which of course is a challenge for any multiplayer game, but doubly so with VR with the audience numbers there. It's going to be a harder battle, which we always knew, but we felt we'd have a bigger initial push for that. And so yeah, obviously the rating, we can see that we've had the positive rating when there's a lot more people online. The first sort of 10 days or so, gradually the 1-star reviews which we've had on the user numbers is dragging things down a bit. So now we're looking at things to address that. And then just touching on the other thing I'd mentioned in terms of those conversion stats, the modes we've got, the various game modes, is something we found a bit hard to communicate at times. We're kind of really excited by the fact we've got these different ways to play, whether you're with your family locally or online, as we mentioned with mobiles, and the practice mode, which some people have really enjoyed, having something just to hang out and 2 robots shouting instructions at you rather than other humans. So from a back-end stats point of view, this is just the previous week, but we're still seeing the sort of Friday, Saturday, Sunday is still popular, and that we're getting the sort of peaks and troughs as you'd expect from an online game based on our game sales to date. So we're seeing this as a really positive basis for building a community now. So we'll touch in a second on things we're going to be doing with this kind of basis. So from a retention point of view, so we've got that base that we want to build from. So we have a few difficulty tweaks that we can look to do. We haven't really had any reports of negatives on the difficulty as it is. It's more a case where we can add in new difficulties to like a weekly challenge, so we can make certain anomalies come up during gameplay at certain times, or we can make it so that there's always the slimes or UFOs or the word challenges which occur during the gameplay. Then that gives people a reason to come back and try and set a leaderboard score each week. We could obviously do some segmenting based on play times and the modes people are playing, and look at how we can target those people differently, whether to get them to try other modes out, or to encourage people who will be having private games with friends to open up to public games. A few different options there. In terms of the messaging, we're adding a sort of in-game news pop-up. So this will be to make people aware of the weekly challenges, of updates that have been released, of events that are running as well, so if they know when to log in to play with others, and highlighting the sessions when there are people online. So sometimes people could be stuck in a single player game, or even on the menu just playing with avatar selection, for instance. We can highlight when games are available for them to play in their region, so they can quickly jump in with others. And then of course the updates alongside that as well. So we've got several updates planned. We'll be updating our VoIP system further next week, adding to the UI, tweaking some of the control grips and things like that, plus things like the control names and instructions you get, adding more crazy and zany ones to the sort of technobabble you have to shout at each other. Continue to engage with our community on Discord and on Twitter and elsewhere, and start to engage with more streamers now. We're unlocking more of our live and sort of mixed reality support, adding to the game, as well as the spectator camera we covered. And then from this Thursday tonight, we're going to be doing a regular kind of event, which I think will be Thursday, but we may look to coincide it with the natural peak we have on Friday and Saturdays as well. So 7 o'clock tonight UK, and then midnight we'll be doing online sessions, which have already had some good engagement from people signing up for those. In terms of future plans, obviously those initial things about retaining the current player base we have and then building on top of that. So future plans, we've got Upload VR Showcase coming next Tuesday. So that's kind of in replacement for the E3 showcases of old. So that's streaming by IGN as well. So we've got a really good slot there showing off some of our future updates and the original trailer a little bit as well. Further updates to our face-to-face mode, the mobile play, cross-play. So we've got new controls and anomalies and disasters that occur on the mobile phone, just like the original game as well. Further anomalies which have been added to the game, so there's things going wrong for the players. Localization support, which is something we'll be adding in as part of our wider PlayStation VR work we do as well, plus looking into Quest hand tracking. So PSVR is something which has slightly been delayed by COVID again. So the game's up and running on PlayStation VR, but we had some hits in terms of the timing to when we can release that. But obviously we think that'll be a huge boost in terms of awareness and number of players because of the 5+ million PlayStation headsets out there and the fact that people want to play with their friends across Quest and everything else. Discounting, obviously we're limited how soon you can do that kind of thing. So we feel the price was fair based on the amount of game modes and content and replayability in there, but obviously we aren't seeing the conversion we expected from the people visiting the page. So we are limited how soon we can do that, but that's something we're considering longer term. Location-based entertainment, so obviously there's a great desire for multiplayer games in arcades. Obviously they've been hit massively by the quarantines and everything else going on. Speaking to partners there, that seems to be easing now, and they're interested obviously in Spaceteam as being part of the relaunch of in-person VR. And again, our cross-play with mobile devices is potentially a good one where people be concerned about putting VR headsets on in a public space. A couple of people could be in VR and a couple could be on mobile, which really sort of expands the amount of players they can have at these different arcades playing the game. Non-VR support is actually something we originally pitched back in 2018, so it'd be cross-play between all of them, and this is something we're still looking at. Obviously that's potentially an interesting way to really increase numbers, allowing cross-play between non-VR players and VR players. We've already seen that with the mobile play, but we can do that even further with a 3D sort of first-person view, as it were. Free weekends is something we're looking at. Obviously we've seen a lot of multiplayer games do this to drive concurrent user numbers. That's something we're discussing, but wouldn't sort of consider for at least maybe a month or so while we do the other updates and everything else. And then longer term, there's always other business models to consider, whether that's a free and then limited time, and then you kind of have a limit on how much you can play that month or week, or number of modes you can play, and then upgrading to sort of unlock those as kind of a shareware almost model. So yeah, so we're still learning. This is our first VR launch, as I said, our first online live game in a way. Most of the other stuff we've done in the past has been with our partners as well. So we're learning a lot. Obviously, communication with your partners is key. We had a bit of difficulty with some of our dates due to the COVID situation and everything else. And obviously, working with new partners, you always have to be careful of that stuff. Launching during a pandemic is interesting. In theory, we're quite well placed as a business with our technologies and experience for producing online experiences, whether VR or not. We found that testing the key art video and the text was useful. Whether that was the right stuff or not, we'll see as we test more with our engagement and conversion stats. Keeping looking for opportunities, so we're still pushing hard in terms of people to make aware of the game, especially with that kind of cross-play. I think that's a really appealing, unique selling point for us at the moment in the current climate. And simplifying the message. I mean, this is something which, while I think we always knew it was going to be a struggle in terms of the game modes and everything on offer, I'm proud that we did make probably the most cross-playable VR game available yet. And yeah, trying to get a message across simply is kind of a challenging thing to do at the same time. And yeah, pricing decisions, I mean, this was something we talked about a lot. Yeah, we don't know, again, whether or not that was a big driver. We do have sort of wish list stats and other stuff which signifies people are interested in the game but are holding off for whatever reason. So yeah, we'll be back to update on this at some point soon. But yeah, if you haven't tried it already, please do check out Spaceteam VR. Thank you. And yeah, any questions?
Yes, we are over to question time. Thank you for that, Simon. Really fascinating stuff. lovely audience have already fired some questions over using the Q&A function. I just did want to mention, I called you a veteran at the beginning. Anthony Ball in our audience has confirmed that's from the mid-80s or before, so you're a youthful young upstart in the game, Simon. Right, yeah. Oh God, we've got a few interesting questions. They're all really great. Yeah, goodness me, it could be a whole talk on some of those. Well, let's ask the first one, as they did ask the first one, but this is a bit big considering we've got a few minutes left. But what are the biggest challenges VR projects still face during launching? You can do a whole conference on that one, right, Simon?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a huge opportunity in terms of, there's definitely a good market there, and there's still limited content coming out on it. I think you still have to look at the same marketing challenges that every other game would have as well. And yeah, you aren't going to break through to the mainstream press, which maybe has the bigger numbers in terms of views and eyeballs and everything else. So I think ultimately it's making sure that you're working well with your platform holder, that you've got good partners, that you know where the gamers that you want to attract, where they're currently playing, what their current game is, and go from that, really.
Great stuff. Yeah, someone's asked an interesting one, and it's, obviously we'd all rather not have a pandemic underway. At the same time, do you believe, you mentioned some of the problems around testing and last minute corrections, but do you believe it'll increase the interest in the game, as people can't go out? Is VR's escapism particularly alluring at the moment?
Yeah, and I think the social aspect's really interesting. You even found on the team that, you're missing seeing people in person, and, this is kind of fine, the top half of the body kind of interaction, but being there in VR with someone is somehow even better still, whether it's the full body is there, whether it represents them or not, on the general movement and everything else. We found that quite nice, and we've had like the LA Times talking to us about that kind of Spaceteam, the mobile game originally, but also the VR aspect of the cross-play and everything else has really been something to bring families and friends back together again, because it is a game which people are aware of it. I think it's up to 12 million downloads or something now, the original. It's certainly something which people recognise and have had a lot of fun with over those drunken nights playing the game. And the ability to do that with a VR headset and a few mobile devices is something really nice. So it's definitely a good time for us. Again, we're questioning ourselves, as you always do, in terms of, did we price it right? Did we market it right? Should we focus more on the face-to-face cross-play rather than the online VR play? You never know, parallel worlds and hindsight 2020 kind of stuff, but yeah, we're excited for where we can fit for this game and future games into the new normal, as the awful term is.
Great stuff. Yeah, and there's a couple of other questions. I feel a bit bad not asking them because I see the names. Thunderbox Entertainment and Dan have both been asking great questions throughout this morning. Hopefully people can find you, Simon.
Yeah, please email me, and always happy to chat and hop on a Zoom call or some VR chat. Maybe chat in Spaceteam VR as well. Always happy to chat with people.
There you go. Yeah, I love the idea of meeting inside the game. So
we actually did an interview on Upload VR with in-game interview, which was quite nice. So yeah, definitely a new method for doing it all.
Well, that's not my next feature idea already. Then brilliant. Well, Simon, thank you so much for your time, for sharing your experience and your insight. Really valuable stuff. We will see you again one day in real life or on the stage virtually again. But yeah, thank you so much, and I'll let you go.
Thank you.